Hey, hi there everybody, and welcome back to my channel. And for all you newcomers, my name is Richard Brockwell, and I love all sorts of images, whether they be color or black and white. But most of all, I absolutely love black and white fine art. So if you're looking for that fine art look in your images, then follow along with me and I'm going to show you the best and easiest process to get that fine art look. Who knows, maybe one of your fine art images may be fine art gallery worthy. So enough talking and let's get into it.
So this is the image we'll be editing. I'm gonna get the most out of it and color wise. The first thing I do is change the profile to Adobe Landscape, where you increase the color. We'll be using Adobe Camera Raw. I find it much easier than Lightroom. And the next thing we do, I go down to the calibration tab and I increase the blue primary. If you go all the way up to 100, you can see the color and saturation increasing quite a lot. I take it down to around 45, 50. I do not touch the color tab where we have vibrance and saturation, since we use the calibration tab here. And then I start with the exposure panel. The histogram is pushed to the right. We need to try and get everything evenly out in the middle, making sure we do not have any clipped blacks or highlights. Gonna start with the highlights slider, push it all the way down. We have much more detail in the clouds here. And then I gonna push up the slider just a bit. We don't have much shadows. Around 5. My aim is to increase the color range as much as I can, since we'll be turning it to black and white. You get more detail out of each individual slider of the colors, like red, blue, green. Next, I'm gonna slightly increase the contrast. The whites slider, I always hold down the Alt key on the PC, Windows, and push up the slider just to check if we have any clipping of the whites, which we do on the top corner. Dial it down until they disappear. You can check the histogram on the top here as well. They need to stay in the black, so make sure you don't have any clippings. And I'm going to do the same for the blacks. We have black showing. And there we are. Now we still need to get the histogram somewhere in the middle. Going to reduce the exposure slider. And you can see much more detail in the sky and everywhere else. Gonna slightly increase it a bit. We had some clippings here in the blacks. So we're ready from this panel. We'll be turning this image from raw to a color, and then from color to black and white, and then from black and white to fine art. Black and white fine art. the next I do is I go down to the effects panel, increase slightly the texture, and a bit of clarity, around 5. We have some clippings here, always make sure you notice them. And I'm going to increase slightly the haze, where you will see much more color. Okay, I'm going to dial it down to around 18, 17, 18. If you want, I'm going to go back up to the blacks. If you hold your cursor over the areas, you can see what they're showing you. You see I have blacks, shadows, highlights, and the whites. I'm going to slightly increase the blacks to remove the clipped black. There we are. And the next thing, I go down to the detail panel. I leave it on 40 for now. I reduce the radius all the way down and increase the detail to around 80, 85. Another tip for you guys, if you hold down the masking with your mouse, click on the masking, press the Alt key at the same time, you can see where you are sharpening the image. All the whites areas will be sharpened, the blacks will not. And there we can increase slightly the sharpening to around 50. I'll take it up to 55. Okay. Look back at your image and check it. You can see the colors are overdone, overcooked. Doesn't matter because we're turning it into black and white. I'm ready from this side, and the next thing I do is open it up in Photoshop. Now don't scare away from Photoshop. I've already told you in my previous videos, Photoshop is quite simple, you just need some practice. Gonna open it up in Photoshop. Okay, now we're in Photoshop. We'll be using mainly this side of the panel. The first thing I do in Photoshop is I make a duplicate background, hold down the cursor and drag it down to where it says plus. We do this. If we make any mistakes, we can go back to the original image. And now from here, we're going to turn it into black and white. The best method I found, and I've checked on hundreds of videos and tutorials, the best way to turn it into black and white is by going down to this small circle that's black and white. And I'm going to go down where it says black and white. And here it's turned into black and white. Now all these sliders, you can adjust them accordingly to your image, or you can leave them how they are. I'm going to press the auto key, see the so you can see the difference. Okay, if you move the sliders up and down, you will affect the range that's affecting that color. And there you have it. We have some reds here. Don't forget we increased the coloring in the Adobe Camera Raw, so it's going to affect us much more. Don't go down too much because it'd be over exaggerating. If you double click, you go back to your original setting. I'm going to dial it down a bit more. I'm going to check the yellows now. Somewhat there. The greens. You can see the tips of the grasses are increasing illumination. I like to leave a bit illuminated there. Check the cyans. It's affecting the water. Don't go down too much because then you get this weird effect here. I'm gonna go leave it around somewhere 28. And here we're gonna try out the blues, which will mostly affect the sky. I dial it down quite a bit, the blues, not too much, because then we get that weird effect like I previously said. Gonna dial it around somewhere there. Check the magenta. It's not affecting anything. Put it back there where it was. And we're going to close this panel. Now here, black and white, we're not ready. We go back down to the small circle, black and half white, and click on the gradient map. I hope I'm not hurrying and that you're following me. Now the gradient map, it's too contrasty for my liking. Click on this small window here. You get a drop down window and click on classic. And there we have our black and white image. If you need to go further to adjust the whites or the blacks, just click on the gradient here. It opens up another window and you can adjust the sliders either for more whites. You have to let go of the mouse to see the difference, or leave it how it was. I'm going to slightly increase the whites. You can try the blacks. No, I leave it back where it was. And click OK. Note that every image is not the same, so you have to make your individual adjustments according to your image. Click OK. We'll close this one. I think I have a dust spot here. I'm going to remove it. With the spot healing brush. Increase it by the bracket. And there we are. Now what I usually do, I'm gonna flatten the image. Make another duplicate background. And then I'm gonna take it back over to Adobe Camera Raw. Here we have the image in black and white. We're taking it back to Adobe Camera Raw to turn it into fine art. We're back in Adobe Camera Raw. I'm gonna decrease the image size a bit. Now here I do not touch any of the panels here. I just start with the masking. The histogram is evenly spread out, no clippings on the whites or the blacks. And we're going to start with the masking. The first thing I do, I start with a linear gradient, which will put over the top of the sky. Another tip for you guys, when you're pulling down on the linear gradient, if you hold the up arrow on the keyboard, you always get a straight line. I go down like halfway to the image. And I lower the exposure on the exposure panel ever so slightly. Slowly, slowly. Okay, it's enough. I'm gonna create a new mask and I'm gonna use the linear gradient again, and we'll be placing it over the first linear gradient. Hold down the arrow to keep it straight. We don't go down that far now. Reduce the exposure again. Okay. That's ready with the sky. Another linear gradient for the foreground. My aim here is to draw the viewer's eye to the middle of the image, and the viewer's eye always goes to the lightest part of the image. I reduce the exposure here. What I'm doing, I'm trying to get the top part of the image as the same gradient of the foreground, the lower part. Dial down the exposure. Should be okay. Sometimes I use 2 linear gradients for here and sometimes I don't. That's it. Now we're going to create another mask, and we'll be using the radial gradient. What I do here is place it over the center of the image where we'll be attracting the viewer's eye. And now I'm going to increase ever so slightly the exposure. There we have it. Next, I'm going to do another radial gradient. Make sure you place it where you put the first one. And here we're going to be creating a vignette. This way, the vignette, if you use it how I am, you'll be creating a natural vignette. Lower it a bit more. I make sure the sides are even. And here we invert it for the vignette. And now we're going to reduce the exposure. Okay, I'm going to slightly close it. We're ready from the vignetting. The next thing I'm gonna do is use the brush tool, and here I'm gonna add some sharpening, not on the sky and not on the water. We don't need to sharpen the breakwater here. And just pass over. You don't have to do everything. The main important part is the foreground. If you have gone a bit too far onto the sea, just use the subtract tool and the brush and you can remove it. It's not going to affect much anyway because the feathering is up to 100. Okay, and now I'm going to increase the sharpening. Not too much, don't over exaggerate it. I'm gonna go around 50. Now I go out of the masking, sit back a bit. If you want, go have a cup of coffee so your eyes settle back again and check your image. We're ready from the masking and we're ready from Adobe Camera Raw. Now the last thing, I take it back to Photoshop just for another adjustment. The image looks a bit flat. We're gonna make it pop a bit, and we'll be using a very simple tool. Click OK. You can see the difference in the image. You can click on this eyeball here. You can see the before and after. Now that's gone a long way, and for me the image is perfect. Now we're going to go back to this circle here, half black, half white, and I'm going to use the curved tool. I don't touch the curve here. I do everything on the default here in the beginning, and then I slightly increase where it's needed. I always use this linear contrast. You can try the other ones if you like. Here I just click where it's on the black here, this dot. I want to put the blacks, not increase, reduce the blacks. If you click here and use the upper keys, you go back, you can see it slightly moving up. Next thing I do, I click again on the curve here, and here I increase the white or highlight. Slowly, slowly, don't over exaggerate it. Okay. Close this panel. If you want to dial it back, just go over to the opacity here. Slide it down. You can see the difference. For me, I think it's perfect how it is. You can click on the eyeball as well to see the difference. And there we made it pop. You see it come brighter just in the brightest parts of the image. I'm going to flatten the image. And there we have our final image. What I do next is reduce the size of the image. Not that much. To about there, where you can see it much better. Well, we've come to the end of the video. Check my final image I done before this tutorial. This is just showing you how I edit. I hope you enjoyed it. Watch my other videos, please. Hit that subscribe button to watch my other videos. Click the notification bell. Also, thank you, and please leave any comments below. Thank you, and make sure to watch the final image at the end of the video. Thank you, guys, and see you.